Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. I'm the Magi, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming historic Brawl Festival. And despite my ongoing frustration with Wizards of the Coast, nearly complete lack of ability to convey information and self-promote, we're going to try and sort through this event and get you prepared for it. Whether or not you decide to play, we've got you covered either way. But before we get into all that, we here at the Stronghold are officially on the road to 1,000 subs. And guess what? When we get there, we're going to give away an account. So if you're part of the 2/3 of viewers that routinely watch my content but haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and get in, player, because we're going to be doing some magic. Now, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, right. All right, so right off the bat, about the only thing that Wizards of the Coast have told us for sure are the dates that this is going to be going on. And of course, that is starting on May the 6th. And I believe it's running through the 11th, but I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. The other piece of information, of course, are the 5 cosmetics up for grabs in this. And of course, it is 5 of the rare duo legendary creatures, very fitting for a historic Brawl festival. Beyond that, we can kind of piece together that the expected entry point on this is going to be 2,500 gold pieces or 500 gems. Typically, this is an event that you don't lose your way out of once you've paid the entry fee. You can continue to play as much as you want throughout those dates. But of course, the prize support only continues through those first 5 wins or so. Now, because these events cost resources to enter and only typically award cosmetics as a reward, I am not a big promoter of these events. I don't tend to play them myself because in essence, you're just buying cosmetics with your in-game resources and time and effort. 500 gold pieces per cosmetic is a pretty good rate though. So if you are a person that doesn't mind buying cosmetics or get some sort of intrinsic value from those, then by all means, this is probably going to be a pretty good way to do it, particularly since you have about a week to get your play in and you really only need 5 wins with no lose out possibilities going. It really could be much worse. So for the remainder of the video, I am going to be making the assumption that you do want to either move forward with this event or generally have an interest in historic Brawl. And right now I want to talk about the meta. And although Rusko, the Clockmaker, is definitely the commander that has really kind of accentuated my frustrations with historic Brawl recently, he is no longer king of the hill. Atraxa, of course, is top dog right now. With nearly 5% of the meta, Rusko is down to about 2.5%, both sporting very solid win rates. And I think what you'll notice here with all of these top contender decks, the ones with the highest rates, the ones with the highest meta share, is that these all tend to be somewhat slower decks. It takes a little bit of time to get set up and get going here, and a very fast deck could be well positioned to make a quick stab and a quick win on these. And well, isn't this event the historic Brawl Festival? Isn't that what it's all about, is getting your quick wins and getting your rewards? Having recently set up a community poll with 4 of the very budget-friendly commanders that I selected from the Multiverse Legend sheet, I was a little bit surprised with the results. I really thought all of these were going to be pretty even keel and we'd have a very slight margin on the winner. But Zata, nobody really seemed to be interested in that, and by comparison, Fynn was far and away the winner. In fact, for most of the time on the poll, it was over 50% of the votes. So Fynn wins it today. Not to worry though, if you are a fan of Ager or Emoti, I am also going to have very budget friendly historic Brawl deck lists for each of those available to you. But Fynn is going to be the focus here moving forward. And I mean, honestly, why wouldn't he be at just 0.8% of the meta? This definitely qualifies as a budget sleeper. The meta decks are not really preparing for facing off against Fynn, at least any more so than they are any other commander. I mean, everything dies to removal, right? Not to mention, this has a very substantial 63% average win rate, and that's about as high as you're seeing in Historic Brawl. Occasionally, you might see a 65 or 67, but 63 is pretty much top dog. And Fynn is that sort of very fast, aggressive deck that makes it well positioned in today's meta. So let's take a look at the deck. All right, so now let's talk about the Fynn deck and exactly why this is so budget friendly. First and foremost, of course, Fynn, despite popularity, is just an uncommon. So it's very likely you already have this in your collection if you are around during Kaldheim. And if not, there's a pretty good shot you've got an uncommon wildcard. You could invest in this pretty painlessly. Of course, Fynn is a mono-color legendary creature, which means the majority of your mana base can just be basic lands. So roughly 1/3 of this deck is just forests. Beyond that, we've got 35 cards that do not come from standard and approximately 35 cards that are easily to be had within the standard environment. The majority of these are commons and uncommons, and then there's just a few rares here that are not terribly hard to come by. Eater of Virtue, for instance, is already in your collection. Reckoner Bankbuster probably should be. Bloated Contaminator is something that you can very easily get from Jumpin', along with Venerated Rot Priest. Celestis is another one of those cards. If you don't have one and you're into Brawl, this is probably a card you should invest in. And Howlpack Piper is another one of those that comes from your new player experience. The one cautionary tale I think I would make here is the Mirex. If you're not into playing a poison-based deck, this card does not have as much place in your collection. So this is the one standard card I would maybe not spend the rare wild card on, unless you're pretty committed to this archetype. And now that brings us to the more of the investment side of things. Two cards in particular I would point out is the Phyresis Roach and Sylvan Smite. These, of course, are alchemy-based cards. So if you're not into alchemy, historic, or historic brawl, be very cautious in considering crafting on these, because you will not be able to use these in standard or explorer if that is your primary cup of tea. The vast majority here, I believe it's 28 of the 35 cards, are commons and uncommons, with Death Touch and Fight spells being the main theme here. The uncommons in particular that I would call attention to for particular consideration that should be easier crafts in my opinion is Mishra's Bauble. This is basically just a draw spell. that fits in literally every single deck. Mind Stone is another piece of ramp and a potential card draw. And if you are a green player, particularly in Brawl, Rona's Monument is a card you should definitely consider crafting. Beyond that, there's only 4 rares here in the non-standard available cards. Beast, Whisperer, and Guardian Project, particularly if you're into Brawl, these are kind of green staples and should be very, very easy crafts. Basilisk Collar, of course, is thematically tied to this deck and probably is not going to see a lot of play outside of a deck like this. Similarly, Karn's Bastion is a proliferate functionality, so if you're not into playing a proliferate based deck, this is probably a card you want to think long and hard before crafting for this sort of deck or event. And folks, before you go, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on a thing. Because I know I can't change the Magic economy all by myself, but I think we can.